Hey everyone, today I'll be going through my recent 300% playthrough of Cuphead. First things first, what is 300% completion? Well, number one, you need to have the DLC, but at its core there are 4 things you need to do to get 300%. First and most importantly, you need to beat all the bosses in expert mode. I mention this now because you'll notice I started a new file. Right before this, I went into another file and started a boss fight in expert mode. This gives me the ability to start a new file, and the next boss I'll face will be in expert mode due to something known as a fresh expert glitch. I'll explain a little bit more later, but let's get into the story now. To summarize, brothers Cuphead and Mugman are on a winning streak at the Devil's Casino. The Devil's main henchman is gassing them up. Suddenly, the devil himself offers the Cups all the money in the casino on the roll of a dice. The Cups would have to give up their souls if they lose. Like a dumbass, Cuphead says yes, no consultation with Mugman or anything. The pair lose, but instead of the devil taking their souls, he tells them they could be forgiven if they would collect the souls of other people who are indebted to him. So here's Elder Kettle, and just like in real life, because he's old, he's got access to magic potions, and it gives Cuphead and Mugman superpowers to help them get out of their predicament. Now I'll discuss the next core item for 300% completion, which is to collect all the coins. I mention this now because here in the tutorial we collect our very first coin. Though it sounds simple, collecting all the coins will require doing all run and guns in the main game and King's Leap mini-bosses in the DLC. The rest are collected on the map, including a couple secret coins, which I'll go into later. Not only are coins required for 300% completion, but you can use them to buy weapons and abilities. Now we go out into the map for the first time, and for those that don't know, Cuphead and Mugman live in Inkwell Isle. It's split up into 3 isles. You're in the first one, and the idea is the bosses get harder as you go on. Here we get 3 coins, and our first stop is to Porkrine's shop. And here you see, like a boss, I get an extra HP. In my defense, I consider this an investment because I will be doing 2 run and guns back to back, and I need all the help I can get. Spoiler alert, you're not going to see elite levels of gameplay here. So here we are now at our first run and gun, Forest Follies. For those that don't know, run and guns contain 5 coins each, and with 6 of them total, account for more than half the coins in the entire game. You may notice I'm not killing any enemies, and this is because I set a personal goal to get P ranks on all run and guns. A P rank stands for Pacifist, and it means I get through these run and guns without killing anybody. This is not required for 300% completion. If you get all the coins, you are fine with that. I just wanted to take on the challenge and also thought it'd be more fun to watch. Because I know YouTube loves listing random shit, I'll have a few running lists in this playthrough as well, including run and guns ranked by how hard they are to P rank. Though Forest Follies is easy with weapons and the first run and gun in the game, I in fact found this the 3rd most difficult to P rank. This acorn maker especially is especially tricky to get past, as you have to wait for a parry from a mushroom from the ledge. And if you miss it, there are very few options to continue. I apologize for this slow gameplay here. This was one of the few times I actually got past the acorn maker, and I wanted to make sure I got through the run cleanly, but I messed that up pretty badly. Because I was so happy to get out of there alive, I decided to spend a few seconds flexing on my haters, but while I'm doing this, let me mention why I choose to play as Mugman. Instead of doing like most brothers would do and kick Cuphead's ass, he decides to help out. Mugman, you are a true Chad, a Chad of the highest echelons. Wow, Mugman, wow. Okay, just so you know, for the run and gun score screens, the only thing that matters is the gold coins. If you are 5 out of 5 on gold coins, you are good on your 300% run. Okay, we're back onto the map, and we're going to use this not-so-secret passage to get to our next run and gun, Treehouse Trouble. I'm doing this so I can get some cheddar so I can buy better weapons. Though the default weapon, the pea shooter, which you saw briefly in the tutorial, is a decent weapon, you need to be really good at aim in order to use it, which I am not, so let's P-rank this run and gun. For this part here, you'll see a lot of balls, but just relax. Look, they're mostly just going above me. I just had to jump over one. Climbing up the interior of this tree, when you first play it, it's definitely intimidating. There seems to be a lot of motion. After a while, you realize that projectiles don't come very often out of these tree things, and that these are not that accurate in where they're going. And it's time to place this run and gun in the list of hardest run and guns to P rank. I mean, if you just look at it, there are way less enemies in Forest Follies, and even though it's intimidating for a beginner, the bees are kind of blind, don't really go exactly where you're going, and it's easy to get around them. So, in my opinion, this is the easiest run and gun to P rank. And now we're back out onto the map where I will use my newfound wealth to get my weapons of choice. So while Mugman walks to Porkrind's shop, I'm gonna go put Christopher Walken dancing in a hotel room in the background. So here at the shop, I pick up the spread shot for later use. However, my all-time favorite goat weapon, which you'll see a lot of during this run, is the roundabout. I love the roundabout. It has a limited range in front of you, however, infinite range behind you, and since I'm socially awkward and like to avoid eye contact, that is perfect for me. So now we get onto the third core thing for 300% completion, which is to complete all the mausoleums. This is by far the easiest thing to do for 300% completion. There are only 3 mausoleums, they're all super easy. As you can see, all you need to do is parry these ghosts before they can reach the little urn or pot in the middle. And after beating each one, you get a new super art that you can use. This mausoleum is the only one that's a little bit different because once you buy the DLC, if you start a new file, you'll have to beat this mausoleum in order to unlock the boat to the DLC island. Which is exactly what we're trying to do right now because after this, we are headed off to do the DLC portion of the 300% run. The reason we do the DLC portion first is in order to unlock Miss Chalice because she is a huge help on some of the Inkwell Isle fights, as well as to have an easier path to upgrade the Cursed Relic, which I'll go into in more detail later.
Victory!
So basically, Miss Chalice tells us that in order to use our super, we need to equip it. And that's done in the middle spot on your player card. However, since I know I'll be equipping my weapons and Miss Chalice soon, I don't bother right now. Okay, so now we're gonna start the DLC portion. The devil only gave us 24 hours to collect all his soul contracts, but I'm sure he'd be cool if we made a little excursion first. So here's a quick synopsis of the DLC story. Miss Chalice, who is in ghostly form, has his cookie, and if Mugman eats it, he gets to be a ghost and she gets to be part of the living. Mugman is a little put off by this, understandably. It's probably something she should have mentioned before. But she says it's all cool because the effects are only temporary. However, after introducing the cups to Chef Saltbaker, he informs them that she could be part of the living permanently without having to switch places with anybody if they could collect a bunch of really good ingredients in order for him to try his new recipe for the Wonder Tart. But since there's no Whole Foods around, they have to collect it from some fearsome enemies on DLC Isle. After Cuphead and Mugman confirm that the Wonder Tart will indeed permanently change Miss Chalice into a living being, they agree to collect those ingredients. So Chef Saltbaker informs us that we need to equip the Astral Cookie in order to play as Miss Chalice. Once this is equipped as your charm, you can't combine it with another charm, unfortunately. However, Miss Chalice does start off with 4 HP instead of 3 like Cuphead and Mugman. Also, I equipped my super art and the weapons I just got at the shop. Please note that there's a coin in this tutorial you have to get, and there's going to be another 3 coins from this dude on the bridge with the newspaper. Right after that, we get into our first boss fight. This would be a good time to mention the Fresh Expert glitch. In a normal new file, you will not be able to play bosses in Expert mode. However, the Fresh Expert glitch locks the whole game into Expert mode if you choose Expert on another file where you have access to it. You will notice that neither regular nor simple was highlighted as I entered this fight, and this is a visual indicator that the Fresh Expert glitch is in action. As I do these boss fights, I'll highlight some strategy that I use and make some general comments. And in general, these comments will apply for both Expert and regular. Even though I'm playing an Expert, regular for most bosses is just a little less of everything and a little bit slower. For the first phase of our first boss, there's not too much to say. It's pretty standard fare. Since I can't handle too many things on screen at the same time, I try my best to kill a lot of minions and also to explode these bags by dashing past them. Okay, I have my very first cheese alert. There are a few areas in the game where you can use cheese. Cheese, by the way, is what I define as something that's very easy to execute. It gets damage done on the enemy, and it's probably something the developers didn't consider. For this cheese, once the record player sound waves or whatever turn red, they cause damage. However, since Miss Chalice has an invincibility roll, you can just roll when it passes you, and it won't harm you. So this is the very first cheese alert. I don't really feel that bad for doing it, since the game is hard enough already. As the snail reveals itself, I'd like to unload my super on him to make the last part of this fight a little easier. The only thing to consider here is that the only way you could get damage onto this anteater is to damage his snout. I'm not sure. I aim for the tongue, but I'm honestly not sure if that actually causes damage. Obviously, one trademark of this fight is that the banner that says knockout at first is fake, and you have to face this snail thing. And the snail, by the way, is, in my opinion, underrated. His attack is actually very fast, and it can be hard to avoid. And just a note, for 300%, it really does not matter what your grade is at the end. As long as it's in expert mode and you beat it, you're good. So as you can see, as opposed to the main game where you collect soul contracts, we get ingredients every time we beat a boss. It's a little messed up when you think about it. We're basically stealing from these people's kitchens without even asking, without compensating them, and we're the good guys somehow. Anyways, now we're on to the next boss, a very difficult one named Esther Winchester.
A great slam and then some. Here goes.
So as you can see, this is our first plane level. We're using Miss Chalice, who has a three-way shot, as opposed to Cuphead and Mugman, who use a more powerful one-way shot. My only pieces of advice here are to try to spread out where the snake oil goes by moving up and down the screen when it's being shot. Every time Esther changes position, there will be a minion who will eventually shoot a spiky ball. I try to kill that minion every time. Also, I like to be right on top of the dynamite as it explodes because the first layer will go around me, but I will have to move to avoid the second layer. This part I find really, really hard. No advice here, just be good at avoiding. In general, if I find a part really hard, that's where I like to save my super in order to shorten the duration of that phase. This third phase is, in my opinion, the easiest part of this fight. You just have to avoid these cans and to avoid the stake. I like to just mini-plane and move forward to the best of my ability while avoiding the meat. The fourth phase of this fight is, in my opinion, one of the hardest phases in the entire game. Is to avoid these sausage things. In expert mode especially, the holes that you can use to get in and out get a lot smaller, and it takes a lot more precision to execute successfully. One piece of general advice is that a super can also be used to get out of sticky situations. This is because you're invincible for a few seconds after the end, and you could use those few seconds to get yourself into a better position for the rest of the fight. Okay, we're back out onto the map, and we have to do a little bit of 300% logistics stuff before we move on to our next boss. One great thing about Cuphead is that it's open enough where you can still choose from 2 or 3 different things to do before moving on. Like every aisle, including the DLC aisle, has hidden passages like this one, and here we find our first hidden coin. And we take this newfound wealth and move to the shop, and now we talk about our very last core thing for 300%, which is to upgrade the Relic. We get the Relic first in a broken form here with the eyeball on it. Yeah, that's a good Relic. And now with this broken Relic, we can unlock the graveyard puzzle. Basically, the graveyards are laid out in a 3x3 grid. Talking to these climbers, inside of their messages, it's hidden which kind of direction in that grid you need to push, and the order is determined by the placement of these climbing finishers. So, first place had down in his message, this guy has down left, he's third place, and then the second place finisher I think is up left. Since my memory sucks, it takes me another attempt to actually remember it. I'm just solving the graveyard puzzle here. It's a lot less complicated than it sounds like. So basically, this opens up the angel and demon fight. Okay, see, now I can go and fight the angel and demon. For continuity's sake, I should have just done it, but I honestly wasn't feeling it at the time of the playthrough, so I decided to do Howling Aces first. Okay, so now we're at Howling Aces. It's a plane fight without being a plane fight. It's some kind of literary device I can't remember right now. But anyway, you're trying to get this bulldog The minions right now in the wings aren't attackable. When the fire hydrants come, I debut my new weapon that I just bought at the shop, the crack shot. The crack shot is basically auto-aim for people who don't want to use a chaser. I particularly find this turret very handy. It's the EX move for the crack shot, and look, it's just, in this round, it actually gets quite a few fire hydrants. It's so convenient, because there's a lot going on. One interesting thing about expert mode is that these dog bows move a lot slower than regular, and that actually makes it harder because it's so easy to forget about them. Honestly, this phase is kind of relaxing. It's kind of easy, even though I take a hit here. Like for this part here, you need to actually hit the gears with your shot, but I'm like barely getting any of that. So now the most distinctive thing about this fight is this portion here. Basically, you control the person in their orientation, but you're seeing it from this orientation. And yeah, for me, I just turn my head. I'm not afraid to admit that I can't process this in real time. When the orientation is sideways like this is where I try to get most of my hits in, because this I can kind of understand. Of course, I'm turning my head. Okay, now we take a break from the DLC bosses to face the angel and demon fight. This is a very non-traditional fight, arguably a boss fight. You don't get graded on it. There's no expert mode. It's just this thing you need to do to upgrade the broken relic to the cursed relic. And once you do that, it gets a lot more complicated. And here we have another cheese alert. I'm sorry, I wish this was more exciting to watch, but if there's cheese available, like a mouse, cheese I will take. For this fight, only one of these is attackable, the one in red. And the one in red changes depending on which direction you look. So when you're facing to the left, the one right above me in this scenario will be red and attackable. So my strategy is to face one direction. However, I kind of camp out here because the cloud thing doesn't actually reach all the way to the left edge. If I end up on the cloud, I'll use my EX to get off of it. And all I have to do is jump to avoid the fireballs. Okay, so now that we did that, this ghost guy tells us that our relic is now cursed and ready to be upgraded or something like that. I'm sure the Cuphead developers wanted to flesh out the cursed relic story a little more, but Hideo Kojima was probably not available, so that's all we got. Now we're back to the DLC bosses with Mortimer Freeze.
This map will get red hot.
Okay, so Mortimer Freeze is an interesting fight. There are 3 phases, with the third one being very, very hard. And the first one is one that looks hard when you first start to fight it, but then you realize its patterns. The most common attack in the first phase, this thing, the icicles, I like to just dash out of it. In fact, you can dash your way out of a lot of these first phase attacks. I would just advise to stay away from the edges, because that could get you in trouble. Okay, this second phase can be really tricky. While the dash was the hero in the first phase, I feel the invincibility roll is a real lifesaver in this one. I use it to get past him, moving across the screen, get past the spikes. I can't use it for this ice cube thing, and this ice cube thing definitely gets dicey. I think the hardest part of this phase is timing everything exactly right. You have to really know your animation cues in this phase. And now on this third phase, I consider the third phase one of the hardest phases of the game. I mean, it is really difficult, and even in this particular attempt, I get so lucky. Basically, I was frozen in fear for a lot of it, and everything just happened to go around me. And I kid you not. At some point, I just get nervous and desperate and want the fight to end, so I just unload a ton of EXs into him, hoping for the best, and luckily I got the knockout. Okay, that was the second to the last ingredient we need to get. We're on to our last DLC boss fight. And after this, I'm thinking we get the ingredients back to Chef Saltbaker. And I don't know about you, but I'm thinking there's a happy, feel-good ending.
Good day for a swell battle.
Glumstone the Giant is basically three very, very difficult phases. I find it actually safer to be closer to him. That way I get less exposure to these deranged-looking elves. Glumstone has a lot of attacks where you're forced to get off the pillars like that one there, and you have to make like it's 2011 and every day I'm shuffling to get out of the situation. As per usual, since I can't handle lots of stuff on screen, I kill as many minions as possible. As Glumstone transitions to his second phase, I'd like to announce a couple awards that this video will have. These awards will include the winner and the runner-up. And here we have, as the runner-up, the second hardest phase in all of Cuphead and DLC, in my opinion, this hand puppet phase of Glumstone the Giant. This phase is so hard because these gnomes are everywhere, and because of these hand puppets throwing the balls, there's very little room to move. There is some pattern though. Basically, the puppets will often vary in height, and there's more room under the puppet that's higher. When both puppets are high, like here, there's going to be the most room. However, when both puppets are low, there's very little room to work with, and with these gnomes flying everywhere, it's just so difficult. It took me so much practice to get past this. And now we transition to another hard phase. The basic pattern here is that these skull things at the bottom get fed either the bone or the bone and the meat. If it's just the bone that comes out of this thing on top, that means that skull will open up a parry for you to open up new skulls to land on. I don't really understand what's happening either. Because I really wanted to focus on not dying, I figured my roundabout would hit the thing on top. However, after a while I realized almost none of them were actually hitting, and I actually had to start aiming. If you remember earlier, I said that I would be listing things throughout this video, and I'd like to introduce a new list, the top 5 hardest bosses in all Cuphead and DLC. And Glumstone the Giant gets to start off this list in first place. Though it's not as dramatic for my list, it's just 3 very, very hard phases and a lot to get right, a lot that could go wrong. So for me, this was the hardest boss in all of Cuphead and DLC. So now Miss Chalice tells us that we have collected all the ingredients and we're ready to deliver it to Chef Saltbaker for him to get off his ass and make us a Wonder Tart. Yo, Chef Saltbaker, we're here. Yo, something feels off. This don't feel right. No, in all seriousness, I decided during the playthrough that I wanted to face Saltbaker later because I didn't have a Super R2, which is kind of my strategy because I suck and get hit a lot. So I decided to come back to him later. However, I will do the King's Leap before I go. Okay, so what's the King's Leap? The King's Leap is pretty much the replacement for run and guns that the main game has. It's a place where you can get coins and where the gameplay is significantly different than what you find in the boss fights. Basically, the king tells us that you can't use weapons here, and most charms won't be effective. However, luckily you do get to play as Miss Chalice, and I feel these fights are designed for her, so thank goodness for that.
A brawl is surely brewing. And begin!
So for this first fight, you have to parry the heads off of these pawns. You'll know which one will fall because they'll do this little booty shake. And this parry trick thing I do is also a lot of fun, not gonna lie. So here's the thing, if you die or retry too much, I don't know the set number, but the king will kick you out of his castle, and then you have to go look for his ladder again to do the next one. And one thing I really wanted to do in this playthrough was make sure I didn't get kicked out. And I made it. I'm worthy. Alright, next fight. I feel this next fight is a good time to talk about damage boost. So basically, anytime you take damage, you're invincible for a few seconds. For this fight especially, I don't ever need to take damage. Basically, I'm getting greedy with how many parries I can get in on his little mohawk. However, if I already am damaged, I figure why not just go in there and get as many parries as I can. And this is a principle you should be aware of for any part of Cuphead, because in addition to getting more damage in, you could also reposition yourself and go through barriers sometimes. So for this fight, even if you only find one situation where you feel comfortable enough parrying his mohawk, as long as you're patient and don't force it, you should be able to take care of this fight. Oh, phew, I haven't died yet. Yeah, I would say that, like on Zephyr's wings, that's a perfect way to describe it. Now we're on to the third one, which I always struggle with.
A great clam and then some. You're up.
You kind of have to be a mix of fast and patient with this one. Like, you want to be patient enough where you don't want to force a situation. At the same time, if you're just like standing around, all the bells will target you and you'll get cornered. It'll be a hard situation. Basically, you need to parry the head, but the head only becomes parryable after you extinguish all the candles that are lit. And you extinguish these candles just by walking past them or jumping on them. They don't hurt you. Not too much more to say about it. You just stay the course after you get your rhythm going. Yes, that was expedient. I'm honored, Your Majesty. So we get a couple more coins. Luckily, I still haven't died, and we move on to number 4, which is the Rook.
Good day
So this fight, which I'm not really sure if it's supposed to represent Henry VIII or not. With this fight, you have to parry the head back to this dude to cause him damage. The more damage you cause to him, the more sparks fly below that you have to watch out for. So Miss Chalice is famous for a mid-air jump. After you parry, you can do a mid-air jump, and you can continue to do mid-air jumps as long as your parry hits. If you parry mid-air jump, try to parry, but it doesn't hit, then you fall back to the ground. So that's always fun to pull off. I'm not that great at it. But overall, I found this fight really fun. It's a tie between this or the knight fight in terms of just fun, casual playing. Chess! That's the game being referenced here. I finally figured it out.
A brawl is surely brewing.
So here we're at the Queen. She's the final fight. This fight is also fun, but stressful. With Miss Chalice for the columns, you can just parry. You don't have to jump. That way you don't mistakenly hit a cannon. To activate a cannon, you do have to jump and parry. One thing that's tricky with this one is that really the top portion of her body, which is like a column, is the only thing you can really target a lot of the time with the way these cannons go. So aiming these cannons takes a lot more concentration than you would imagine. Oh yeah, and also the Fabergé eggs, keeping you from getting to where you need to go. And I spend an embarrassing amount of time missing shots. Finally, I get her. Okay, I finished the King's Leap, so that nets me an additional 11 coins total, so 2 for each boss and a bonus coin for beating them all. Following that, I buy weapons. These weapons are actually the only ones I'll use for the rest of the entire game. Just the Twist Up, Lobber, and Charge Shot. I will make a couple other visits to the store, but for other reasons. But in terms of weapons, this is it. Okay, so since I decided I'm not going to give Chef Saltbaker his ingredients, I'm going to go back to Inkwell Aisle 1. Wow, we're just leaving everybody hanging today. So here we are about 40 minutes into the video, and I'm about to face my very first Inkwell Aisle 1 boss fight. One big reason we went to the DLC aisle first is to get the Cursed Relic so we could start upgrading it to a Divine Relic. In order to do that, we have to beat a certain number of bosses with it equipped. I'm going to equip it right now, and in addition to this amazing soundtrack change you are now burdened. It says when you select the Cursed Relic that it burdens your host, and boy does it burden you. You'll notice this right away when you get into a boss fight, because you will start off with exactly 1 HP. In addition to that, you have no control over the weapon you get to use. So pretty much, I start off with the Lobber here, but anytime I let go of the shoot button, dash, or use an EX move, the weapon will switch to a new weapon not of my choosing. Although not all is lost, in addition to your weapon randomizing, you get in a limited capacity every single charm in the game at the same time. The most important at this stage is probably the parry ring's ability to generate HP after a certain number of parries. So I just generated 1 HP by doing those 3 parries. Really quick, as Goopy gets into a second phase, I have to say, I believe Goopy Legrand is an underrated boss. He's always spoken of, oh, he's so easy, but this second phase is actually not that easy. I think the hardest part is that he jumps so quickly, you run into the mistake of dashing into him when you mean to go under him anytime he stops to do his boxing glove or face attack or whatever. Hey, I'm introducing a new category to this video, fuck it. Goopy Legrand, most underrated boss in all of Cuphead. I'm sticking up for my boy Goopy. Anyways, as we finish off his third phase in a very slow, methodical manner of jumping around to ensure we don't get hit by the gravestone, I successfully complete 1 boss fight with the Cursed Relic equipped. The number of boss fights you'll need will actually depend on which bosses you decide to do, because bosses are weighted, with Inkwell Isle 1 bosses being worth the least and bosses being worth more as you traverse through the aisles. One other note is that you don't actually have to be in expert mode when beating a boss with the Cursed Relic. You can do this in regular mode also, but since I need expert mode for 300% and for the purpose of the video I don't want to repeat boss fights, I'll be doing all the Cursed Relic fights in expert mode. Something of note is that you get soul contracts for every boss you beat, and this is what you need to satisfy the devil. And now we move on to the fight that everyone knows, the root pack. Everyone's like, yeah, sure, I could beat this potato. And then a lot of people can't, and they decide that they hate the game and never play it again. So we have the Cursed Relic equipped again. I'm confident enough in this fight where I think it's okay. One kind of tactic that beginners don't use a lot is to use an EX to pause in the air temporarily. If you need to stay in the air for longer than a normal jump, doing an EX move pauses you in the air briefly. That's a good thing to use. Not too much about this fight. This is pretty much the tutorial fight. With the Cursed Relic, it makes it a little bit more difficult, but still not too much. I make sure that I get 3 parries in order to get the extra HP. And from then, it's just standard fare. The carrot, of course, is always a little bit difficult, but I would say keep on pressing that shoot button until you find a weapon you're comfortable enough with in order to kill these mini carrots to your satisfaction and get hits on the main carrot boss. So an interesting thing with uncursing this relic is that you have to find a balance picking the bosses that you want to beat. While logic would dictate you would pick the easiest bosses, even bosses that I find easy, I wouldn't try to do the Cursed Relic with. For instance, Cagney Coronation, I feel would be very difficult with the Cursed Relic. Good bosses to pick are ones with a lot of parries. Even utility parries that don't count towards your parry total at the end can be used to generate HP. And that plays a major factor with the bosses I decide to face with the Relic. The appearance of this relic in your equip card actually changes. You'll see 2 eyelashes now, and eyelashes will grow on this as you upgrade it. Now we'll see another reason I wanted to do DLC Isle first, and that's so we could use Miss Chalice for some of these Inkwell Isle fights. She's just so helpful in this next one, Ribbian Croaks.
A brawl is surely brewing. And begin!
So the best thing about Miss Chalice is that she has a shorter jump and she has the ability to double jump while in midair. And this is great when you need to save your ass when you're about to fall on something that could hurt you. In addition to that, as opposed to Cuphead and Mugman where you jump and parry, for her dash includes a parry. So whenever you need to parry to the side, it's just so much easier. With Cuphead and Mugman, it's actually kind of difficult to time this particular parry. Now, Rivian Croaks is a little bit of an interesting boss because there's a lot of transition animation where you can get damage in. However, he's overall pretty easy. Like this phase here, you just have to either let the fan push you or push against it, and the projectiles are relatively slow. And the last part is really the most interesting part because what you get out of the slot machine really changes how difficult this fight can get. In this particular playthrough, I get the easiest platforms twice in a row. One thing to note is that you can't actually damage the slot machine in between phases. Honestly, when I played this, I figured I was probably going to lose this anyway, because I didn't think I would beat him. I was playing a little bit wastefully and not that seriously. But I did get the win, so I decided to use it, and even though these are all totally wasted EXs. So overall, a very fun fight with Street Fighter references. Chef's kiss. There's this guy that looks like a coin, and he basically tells us, any coin you find on the map, you're welcome to keep. Like, bitch, as if I wasn't already gonna do that. Alright, now we're meeting our first plane boss for the main game, Hilda Berg. However, this main game doesn't know that we've already been in a plane, so this guy tells us we need to read the blueprints in order to fly a plane. For every airplane fight, I'm actually going to be playing as Mugman from now on, just because the shot going in one direction is just easier for me to comprehend. We equip our extra heart, and then once we do that, we finally get to see Hilda Berg.
A great slam and then some.
Honestly, Hilda Berg has no business being this difficult this early on in the game. As a matter of fact, we come back to one of my lists. We're back to our hardest bosses in all of Cuphead and DLC, and Hilda Berg gets a spot at number 4. For me, she was the 4th hardest boss in all of Cuphead and DLC. As opposed to regular difficulty, you will definitely get Gemini and you will definitely get Sagittarius in the phases. These green plane motherfuckers are the bane of my existence. My strategy for this boss, as with many other bosses, is killing as many minions as I can. Any green plane I see, I try my best to kill it, because it just makes it so much easier. And now, as we get on to phase number 4 of this boss, we are here at, in my opinion, the absolute hardest phase in all of Cuphead and DLC. This Sagittarius phase is so difficult because these blue stars either need to be shot out of the air or explode on you, and they will accumulate, and it just becomes so hard. For that reason, I make sure I'm able to get a super in during this phase. There's always a sigh of relief when the Sagittarius phase is over and Hilda gets to this phase, because I know at this stage that I'm pretty much home free. I mean, yes, I might take a hit or two. The last phase, the moon phase, is a lot more predictable. You just have to be cognizant about dodging the stars and know how the UFOs work. Basically, if it's a red UFO, you want to rush through it. If it's a brown one, you have to get more to the right in order to trigger the brown UFOs and then back away. And I must say, visually, in terms of pure visuals. I think this phase is the best looking in the entire game. I just think it's very pretty how the night sky is with the UFOs glowing. It's a very pretty picture, in my opinion. So anyway, when her face is extended, you want to do an EX missile because it has multiple hits. But just stay the course, don't panic, be a little patient. In general, in expert mode, final phases are a lot longer. Alright, we get Hildeberg's Soul Contract, and we're on to the final boss of Inkwell Isle 1. He may be a familiar face, he's in a lot of Cuphead promo, but it's Cagney Carnation, and he's definitely got an interesting dance. And for this fight, we're using Miss Chalice because her sideways parry is indispensable, especially in the first phase when Cagney Carnation does a seed cannon. Basically, these seeds will all grow into plants that try to attack you. The pink ones I want to parry not only for the X move because that will grow into a pumpkin that floats at the top of the screen and becomes a huge pain. In this fight, I'm using the lobber for the first time. I probably use a lobber with the Cursed Relic, but I'm equipping the lobber for the first time. And it's just very helpful, especially with the EX move. Here, I'm not trying to do a super. I should have unequipped it before I started. But now we see we've transitioned to the second phase, and this is where he does a face attack, a sandal. At least the other seeds are gone and I have to worry about it. Very foolishly misinterpret the animation there, and now he transitions to his final phase. I mean, this should be easy, and I shouldn't have gotten hit as much as I did, but basically, you can't go on the bottom at all. You want to be on the platform that's not going to have these vines on it. EX moves to stay in the air if you need to. At some point, I just get frustrated. With 1 HP, I figure, I'm going to die. I'm just going to unload EXs on him. This is a desperation move you'll see a few times in this playthrough, but I get the win here. And now we're done with Inkwell Isle 1. We can finally move on to Inkwell Isle 2. There's a hidden coin here. This hidden coin only becomes reachable after you beat Cagney Carnation. I'm not sure if there are any other conditions. King Dice does a little check-in with us. He's so nice for doing that.
Mr. King Dice, the game is in the line.
Oh, but before we get to proceed to Inkwell Isle 2, Elder Kettle gives us a lesson. He tells us that there will be a day of decision, and we have to make the right decision. This is called foreshadowing, folks. Anyway, we're on to Inkwell Isle 2. Now would be a good time to mention that the Isles kind of have themes going on with them. So the first Isle was kind of like a rural thing, and now we're at the circus, festive kind of party kind of theme for Isle number 2. We run into some people who give us this totally downer story about their missing friend. I don't got time for that. And we do Baroness von Bonbon.
Good day for us. Well battled.
First boss we face here, we keep Miss Chalice, we keep the same weapons, Lopper and Roundabout. So you have to first face 3 mini-bosses. The 3 mini-bosses are out of a pool of an available 5, I believe. We get Candy Corn to start, and he's among the more challenging mini-bosses. He kind of makes a figure 8. It's a little irregular, his pattern. But with Miss Chalice especially, with the double jump, you just have to avoid his baby Candy Corn and you should be good. Do a lobber trap here. And how's the jaw, old chum? Sorry, that's what he says when he kills you. But all he does is really just follow you around. You have to avoid his little baby jawbreakers. The final mini-boss is this Belgian waffle, I think. And he's really easy. You just have to kind of stay away from him. Definitely stay away from his corners and his side. I would come to regret not getting another parry because this is the closest I came to getting an S rank this entire playthrough. I don't get a single S rank, but this is where I came the closest, and I just think afterwards, man, with just one more parry, I would have gotten that S rank. So after those 3 phases, you have to face Baroness herself. But yeah, last phase, I just kind of wait for the danger to come to me before reacting. Like just standing on that green platform with the roundabout facing the other way, that gets a decent amount of damage on her, and I could use a double jump to maneuver around the hedge pretty easily. Okay, our first soul contract from Aisle 2. We talked to this guy, and he gives us the ability to put bombs on our plane, and this will become very useful in a little bit. Now, first of all, we find this barber shop quartet dude just jerking off behind the circus tent. I was actually going to do Funfair Fever, but then I realized I didn't have the smoke bomb. I forgot to buy it. And I really wasn't feeling Wally Warballs at the time, so I decided to just go around and do Grim Matchstick. For this, I go back to Mugman, and here the lobber is used. The charge shot makes its debut in this fight. I do the extra heart.
This match will get red hot.
Alright, so we're doing Grim Matchstick. He's often referred to as one of the hardest bosses in the game. I think he's among the harder platforming bosses, yeah. I mean, the first time definitely took a while to beat him. I mean, now I can beat this pretty consistently, so I don't know. I have a biased opinion. What's kind of tough here is making sure you have a safe place to land while you're dodging all this stuff. I mean, what I try to do is try to bait the tail so that when it appears, it's some place where I have space on both sides where I can have some options. Anyway, moving on to the charge shot here, just because I want to stay further away for safety purposes. This fight, as opposed to other boss fights, is drastically different from regular mode, as in the clouds go the other way. So you're moving towards the dragon in the first phase, and now you're moving away. I don't know if it makes it harder, it definitely makes it different. So I have a super here that I'm gonna unleash here, just because I want to shorten this phase. It's not particularly hard, but those little flames on the bottom, some of them randomly jump up and try to either go where you are or anticipate where you're gonna go, and sometimes they could be dead on and very hard to avoid. Although what makes this fight hard, at least for me, is the last phase here, because hitting these fireballs will make them split into 4 and hit you. I try to get through these fireball phases. When he goes into his like gas nozzle, it's just like you stay on the top and you can get a little reprieve and hit him often. I unload a few EXs. Unfortunately, 300% means doing some logistic stuff that's kind of boring, and we're on to Mausoleum 2. Mausoleums are not terribly exciting to watch or play, but in this time, I'll just talk about the 2 secret coins on Inkwell Isle 2. Inkwell Isle 2 is the only isle that has secret coins, and you have to do certain things in order to unlock them. What I'm doing here is trying to line up these ghosts so I can parry 4 in a row without touching the ground, which I pulled off. This is to unlock a secret coin really close by. So it's really efficient to do it here in Mausoleum 2. Just a note, when I say secret coin, I'm talking about something where you need to do something to unlock it. There are hidden coins where you just have to find a coin on a map where it's not that visible. I will refer to those as hidden coins. And remember how we went to a secret passageway to get to Grim Matchstick? Doing that unlocks another secret coin. So now those 2 secret coins are ready to collect. We're gonna collect one right now, but the other one we have to go back to the left side of the map. So we'll pick that one up when we go and face Wally Warbles. This Mausoleum, Mausoleum 2, the super art unlock is more focused on defense with invincibility for like 6 or 7 seconds, I don't know, for Cuphead and Mugman, and an extra heart for Miss Chalice. Okay, so now with the Mausoleum done, I'm going to be collecting quite a number of coins now and through various means. I foolishly think there's a hidden coin here, and I always check that area even though I've never found a coin in all my playthroughs. Okay, so I really quickly get the smoke bomb because in order to P-rank Funfair Fever, I would need to use that. I'm sure there's a way to do it without it, but I'm not that sophisticated. So now we get the secret coin we unlocked in the Mausoleum, or actually I think I unlocked it in King's Leap, thinking back on it. But he's juggling, so he admires people that can juggle in the air, like you parried, so he gives you a coin for that. He's a juggling Patreon. And this is a hidden coin behind this caravan, that's where it is. And now we're gonna get coins the old-fashioned way with a run and gun. We haven't seen one of those in a while. Okay, so Funhouse Frazzle is unique because they have these cards in the center of the screen, and you can use those to reverse gravity, also reversing your up and down controls, so that you could walk on the ceiling if you need to, and oftentimes you will need to. What I'm doing here is probably the most tricky part about this P-rank. You can't shoot the eye, so you have to wait till the mouth opens, and then time your parry to get on the side after the enemy passes, but while the mouth is still open. The next 2 parts of the run and gun are actually not as complicated as it looks, simply because the enemies don't start their motions until after you enter the stage, so if you're quick enough, you could already be past your enemy before they've even started their attack. Anyway, we need to rank this on the easiest to P-rank, and this was actually the second easiest for me. I thought I would have to give this a good hour or so. Because the enemies take so long to react to you, you can just dash past and avoid a lot of danger. And number 5 on the most difficult run and guns to P-rank, the second easiest. Okay, this part is a little embarrassing because this is my first 300% playthrough and my first time doing this path. I realized just now that because I didn't do Funfair Fever nor Wally Warbles, I don't have a way to just go to the left side, and I have to go all the way back using the secret passageway. You just enjoy the music as this is happening. Before facing Wally, we're gonna get the secret coin from this weird lady who's just like, I'll pay money for secret passageways. Okay, so now I got a little scared because before this I had never actually beaten Wally Warbles on expert mode. So this will be a journey of discovery.
Red hot. Here goes.
Alright, so a well-known exploit in regular mode is that you can hug the left side and not get hit by the breaking eggshells. Breaking eggshells are really the biggest complication in this first stage. In expert mode, the eggshells fly along the left edge, so you can't camp there, but you can stay just like 1.5 plane lengths from the left edge. Try my best to get parries so I could get a super in on him, which I do, thankfully. I'm just trying my best to shorten this first phase because it's very chaotic. The second phase is a lot more predictable. So as we transition to the second phase here, don't do as Donnie Don't does. Basically, you need to hit the bird's head, which I try to do, but I'm missing so many shots. The thing is, these feathers kind of form lanes, so once it starts, you can't really get over to where you need to go. And these birds get in the way for me to get to where I need to be. As a result, this phase is taking forever, and I'm missing so many shots. I might as well give my compliments to Wally while this embarrassment is happening for me, as he has made my list top 5 hardest bosses in all of Cuphead, and he comes in at number 3, the 3rd hardest boss in all of Cuphead and DLC. So congratulations, Wally. It's just 4 phases that are like pretty complicated. I would say 1 is pretty brutal. So really hard. This phase needs a lot of practice to time parrying these shots correctly and so forth. I mean, it feels good once you get the timing right. Like me, I try not to get into that circle of eggs, but sometimes you just have to. Sometimes it just forces you to get in there. If you're having trouble with that, I would say mini-playing. You can move faster. I play pretty conservative throughout this whole fight just because the last phase always causes me trouble. So I have a super, but I'm going to save it for the last phase. Like the nurse birds and Wally Warbles himself throwing garbage at me, I am going to get hit. It's an inevitability. So I just try to have as much HP as I can at this phase. And eventually we get it. And it's true, even without his feathers, I was in for stormy weather. Okay, not gonna lie, beating Wally Warbles was a huge relief. As I was capturing this game footage, I was doubtful if I would even be able to complete the 300% playthrough. But after I beat Wally, I kind of knew it would be a certainty. Anyway, now we equip the smoke bomb and do the Funfair Fever P rank. Now this run and gun actually lends itself well to P ranking because these balloons, for instance, if you shoot them, will have bullets inside of them that come out, so it's to your advantage to not kill them. Similarly, these clowns are better off not being killed because otherwise the ball gets faster and harder to avoid. The cannonballs being shot at will only go in one of 2 patterns, either top, middle, down, or down, middle, top, and it'll repeat that way. The smoke bomb comes in handy to get past these robot things and also the cannons. Timing's a little tricky, but you get used to it. This is the first run and gun I actually P-rank, so I'm pretty used to it at this point. But I will rank it. For me, it was the 4th most difficult to P-rank, also the third easiest. The thing that makes it really hard is this last phase, at least in my opinion. These condiments are hard to avoid because obviously the platforms are moving up and down, so you have to time where you think Mugman will be. Also, the condiments are just long. You could very easily land on them. It's a fun one. I really like Funfair Fever a lot. Okay, with Funfair Fever done, now we have 2 more bosses for Inkwell Isle 2. So now we move on to another, in my opinion, very visually pleasing boss fight, and that's Jimmy the Great. I get my extra heart, it's a plain level, and it's tricky.
Good job for us. Well done. Now go.
So there are a total of 5 phases in this fight. This first phase can be one of either 3 things. This jewelry that I'm getting here. It could also be like swords and also cat sarcophaguses. At this stage of the game for plain levels, I use this like different grip on the controller so that I'm always pressing shoot and I could very easily press the mini plane button. At this stage, plain levels require lots of mini planing. For these pillars, in expert mode especially, they get a lot closer. You have to mini plane to move fast enough to shoot these things. And for this fight, all damage carries over, so killing both of the faces on the pillars when you have them available is definitely advantageous. I don't do it because I'm focused on safety for the most part and not confident that I'll be able to do it in time. And here for phase number 3, we have a cheese alert. So basically I use the bomb, I stay to the very top. I'm trying my best to get the bombs to hit the guy, and when they're not, to hit the spawn point of the ghost. Doing this, I could avoid the eyeballs that cause me a lot of problems because the elliptical path is something my brain doesn't comprehend very well. Really not much I do except mini planing and moving left to right. So definitely cheesy. This next phase looks cheesy, but it's actually kind of hard to execute. You do have to get your timing right, and execution makes this, I would say, a bit tougher than just plain old cheese. Here you want to use a super to break out of this area, and yeah, it's much nicer being under the doll when he shoots, because especially when he moves forward, there's just very little room to move when the hat discharges its projectiles. Here, for instance, I'm just praying that he dies, because I don't really have much recourse if the hat gets to me. Alright, final phase. In my opinion, probably the easiest phase. What I try to do is bait the hat attack to go to some place where I don't want to be, usually near the edges. And for these 3 pyramids, an eye will occasionally open up, and as long as you're not directly above or below or directly to the sides of those eyes as it opens, you can adjust accordingly. So we get Jimmy's soul contract, and now we move on to the last boss of Inkwell Isle 2. He's actually one of my favorite bosses, and one I'm pretty confident with, so I decide to use the Cursed Relic in order to make progress in upgrading that. Now the Cursed Relic, because it's got the eyelashes, is partially upgraded, so now it takes less parries to gain HP, the smoke bomb happens more often, whetstone happens more often. Not drastic improvements, but still it helps.
Here's a real high-class.
So yeah, really quickly, I want to announce a superlative for my video. The boss I would most like to have a beer with, and that's Beppy the Clown. He just seems like an interesting dude. I love his facial expressions. I just love him as a character. He's definitely my favorite character in all of Cuphead, besides Mugman, of course. So with the Cursed Relic first phase, I'm just looking for stuff that can simultaneously hit the ducks and Peppy himself. I'm not trying to go for parries in this part. I mean, Converge and Crack Shot are ideal for this stage. Okay, so here I'm not aggressively trying to get these balloons because this is a good place to get parries. I really want to get at least an extra HP before continuing on to the next phases. So basically I'm trying to get as many parries as I can. One reason I chose this stage is because the train itself has a parry right on its nose as it enters from the right, and that counts towards generating HP, which is great. Okay, as we transition into the next phase, this is probably the hardest phase of this fight. I mean, it's highly variable. Basically, it gets complicated if the train is coming in, he comes down on his horse. Like, whenever the train is not coming, you could feel comfortable being right under Beppy because you know you won't get hit. But then when the train comes, you have to figure out what to do. The green horse, the horseshoes fly in a sine wave. The gold horse, you get this deal here, and you have to find the gap. There's nothing to shoot here, but I'm holding on to the spread shot because it's great for the last phase. I want to keep it. Luckily, I'm able to generate one more HP before going into the final phase. The final phase is fairly simple because you just need to stay on the platforms. It gets complicated once the frog things come out and start shooting the baseballs. You may notice that I'm not a big fan of minions. I try to kill minions whenever I can, so with the supers, I try to clear out these minions before the train comes. I don't do a very good job executing, obviously, but usually by the time the second wave of those baseball chucking minions come, you're close enough to beating the main boss that it becomes less of a worry. But I get it done here. We have another Cursed Relic fight under our belt, and we're done with Inkwell Isle 2 and ready to move on. Okay, we get Beppy's soul contract. Before we leave Inkwell Isle 2, I'll check in with this Barber Shop Now quartet because they found their missing friend. They want to sing us a barbershop song. It's nice to rest your... But sorry, ain't no one got time for that. I much prefer this creepy-ass music. So before we move on to Inkwell Isle 3, King Dice flatters us, saying he underestimated us, and to go on through to the next isle. So we move on to Inkwell Isle 3, but the devil and King Dice have a little powwow, and King Dice says, hey, you need to actually watch out for these cups, whereas the devil responds, haha, once they get to me, I'll know what to do. So the theme to Inkwell Isle 3 is, it's metropolitan. You're in the city now. You're gonna make it after all. So I'm switching to Miss Chalice for Rumor Honeybottoms, and this I feel is a little bit of an exploit because Cuphead and Mugman can't naturally go up two platforms, but Miss Chalice with her double jump can, and it gives her a great advantage. So phase one of this fight is you have to beat this cop guy who, for me, looks like Monterey Jack from Chip and Dale, but I'm not sure if that's the inspiration for him. I'm trying my best just to target him with the lobber. I will try my best to kill the worker bees moving about. Pink cones coming out of the bomb can be parried. Parrying that is easier with Cuphead and Mugman. Okay, so once beating her security guard, we get to meet Rumor Honeybottoms herself. She'll come in either in the center or the sides. In the center, you'll always get this thing where she shoots the bees out of her mouth. The most efficient way to do this is to attack her body, actual body, not the head, and that supposedly makes the final phase shorter. An interesting thing with expert mode is that there's only one black triangle, whereas in regular mode there are two. I'm not sure why they would take that out. But even though I don't think she's a top 5 most difficult boss fight using Miss Chalice, I will rank her as number 5 as the 5th most difficult boss in all of Cuphead and DLC. With Cuphead or Mugman, I feel this is a top 3 fight, and considering the spirit of the original playthrough with Cuphead and Mugman, number 5. Congratulations, Rumor. Anyway, when she's reading her book, that means she's going to transition into her final phase. And this final phase is really tough, one of the hardest. These boxing gloves kind of have a mind of their own. And I'm very bad at reacting at the last second. If you move too far to the side, she'll do her buzzsaw attack and you have very little room to move. Again, lots of missing platforms at this stage, so having this chalice is just such a huge advantage. I use the crack shot, basically auto aim, and get it done. Okay, so we get Rumor's soul contract, a whole new isle to explore. I decide to go this way. In addition to there being a city, you also get to go to the docks, which I think is really cool. Our next fight is Briny Beard. I find this really fun. I got the roundabout, and I used the twist up for the first time. For Isle 2, the lobber really stole the show, but for Isle 3, the twist up has a special place. I also equipped the smoke bomb, and you'll see why in the last phase.
A great slam and then here goes.
Briny Beard's fight sometimes makes me laugh out loud, because there's so much chaos on screen, you're just in disbelief that you're somehow able to or not able to process it. So you're basically facing Briny Beard at the top and the ship itself. So Briny Beard himself can either shoot or summon. My ideal position is pretty close to him, shooting at him with the twist up, which is just at a perfect angle. However, I can't stay there forever. For the first phase, it's only Briny Beard himself attacking, but then the ship gets frustrated and starts spewing cannonballs at you. This is a very regular interval, so that's at least some consistency, but it's easy to forget. So this squid, in expert mode, I actually recommend you kill it. In regular mode, it doesn't darken your screen enough that it handicaps you, but in expert mode, it does get really dark and hard to tell what's going on. One thing I try to do to get extra damage is use my twist up E-exit. Holds me in the air for a little bit, and it's got this fun little tornado. How could you go wrong with that? So the ship at this point is done with Captain Briny Beard's incompetence and wants him off. It's mutiny, and the ship himself fights me by himself. The twist up again comes in handy because while I'm ducking under this laser beam, I can still get damage in on the boss. The whole reason I got the smoke bomb was to avoid these loop-de-loop fireballs because my brain just cannot handle circular paths for projectiles. So it gets a little dicey at the end, but we get it done. It's overall a very fun fight. Alright, we get Captain Briny Beard's soul contract, and we're moving on to a run and gun now. We're P-ranking this one. It is Perilous Piers.
Now go.
So this is a really difficult one to P rank. It's difficult just to do normally also. The first part I would say is very, very random with the fish flying and so forth. It's especially frustrating when you're on these crabs and you're trying to jump from one crab to the other and a fish is just like right there blocking your way. And if you get off of the crab, it just becomes more difficult. Over here, it gets much more predictable. This backstroking lobster, I know exactly what he's gonna do. Like in a normal playthrough, I would have killed him by now, but I gotta wait for him to pass through. You know, kind of like when you're swimming lanes at a gym and you have to let an old man by. I'm sure there's more efficient ways to do this, but I probably wouldn't be able to execute them anyway. To do well on this run and gun, you have to really know your parry timing. You have to parry this octopus head jewel thing occasionally so that he'll destroy the blocks in front of you. And also, it keeps you in the air long enough to avoid these cotton balls on the left. While you're doing this, you have to also avoid all these shrimp. That's what makes this run and gun so difficult to P rank. In fact, it's number 1. The winner of the most difficult run and gun to P rank is Perilous Piers. By beating Perilous Piers, we open a path into the city center, but we're not going there right now. We talk to this turtle, make sure he's not having a seizure. He's okay, he's talking about being non-violent, whatever. And then we go to Cala Maria. Oh, Cala Maria. At first, this fight is really difficult because it goes against a man's nature to shoot something so pretty. As you can see, she has a striking appearance, but she's actually a very formidable boss. She deservedly belongs to be on Inkwell Isle 3. What makes things very difficult, for every attack minus the very first one, there's a bottom component, like this liquid stream being shot up from the horse. This turtle will have like a sea mine thing. Basically, the combination of bottom enemy plus other enemy really makes the first phase very variable. I would say this is about average what I get here. The ghost can be avoided very easily, by the way. It's all timing. And when you have to move out of the way, you really have to move very little out of the way to avoid them. I find yellowfish pretty easy to avoid. I just make figure eights. We move on to the second phase, and basically she's got her eels with her. I did save my super for this. When she's got all of her eels out, they shoot these pellets and they can really accumulate, so I kind of want to cut down on the eel number. She will turn you to stone if you shake and button mash hard enough. You get out of it faster. I don't get out of it that fast. I mean, I'm a millennial. I only shake things like a Polaroid picture. Okay, yeah, I mean, here you have to reach a balance between getting rid of eels and getting hits on Cala Maria. If you're mini-planing, you could avoid the pellets kind of easily, so I probably needed to focus more on hitting her. I did build up a super, so luckily that sends her into her final phase. Even though I still have 4 HP, I managed to get hit an absurd amount of times, and I think this is just jitters. Sometimes it's just like jitters at the end. My fingers were all like shaky and slipping on the controller. But yeah, this is about over. Good night, Maria. So sorry to have done that to you. I came here for the soul contract, but you took my heart. Okay, first thing we do after getting Maria's soul contract is get this hidden coin here. It's the only hidden coin in Inkwell Isle 3. And then we go to another plane fight. The last plane fight, in fact, in the entire game. We talk to this guy who tells us that music is too complicated these days. I want less. We use this secret passageway to get to Dr. Cal's junkyard. And this will also be a cursed relic fight. Now, in general, plane fights are much more predictable when using the cursed relic because there's only 2 attacks that it could randomize between. I may only start off with 1 HP, but there are tons of parries in this fight. I know I will max out on my parry ring allowance and be able to generate 3 extra HP. For that reason, I feel confident enough to use the Cursed Relic on this fight. I think this fight has a reputation often noted as the hardest fight in Cuphead. I personally disagree. To me, a hard fight is unpredictable. This fight to me it gets complicated, yes, and the last phase is killer, but it's a predictable fight. I have a set method to beat the first phase, for instance. First the head part, then the belly, and then the heart. As you can see, I already made 2 extra hearts because the mandatory parry to get rid of the energy beam going up and down needs a parry, and you get to generate HP. So when his heart is out like this and his head is back, this is when you know he's about to switch into phase 2. Highly recommend to have a super ready. It shortens this phase drastically. I could have had this done, but my aim was crap. You want to shorten that, because those, like, skull bombs will really accumulate and be a problem. Okay, the last phase. Really long. And I would say really difficult. It's either you have the rhythm down or you don't. I consider this like double dutch. You either got the rhythm or you don't. I mean, obviously I got the rhythm this time. Supers are really useful, even though it may be hard to aim on him exactly. You could go through the walls during your invincibility frames. I have a super here. I accidentally get damaged, but I decide to use this damage boost to get right in there, so I was able to land the super right on him, luckily. Trying to stay calm, trying to keep to this little poking, prodding pattern that seems to be working for me here. And yeah, luckily, with all the parries available, I generated the 3 extra HP I need to get through this. And another Cursed Relic fight under our belt. After this, the Cursed Relic should be upgraded to the next level, and we'll check out the equip card to see the extra eyelashes. It's really cool. Alright, we got Dr. Cal's robot soul contract. The robot soul, I guess, not Dr. Cal's. We're keeping the Cursed Relic. As you can see, it has grown eyelashes. It's upgraded. In fact, I did Dr. Cal's robot first to have this upgrade ready for Sally's stage play.
Here's a real high-class bout. Here goes.
Okay, so a couple reasons why I feel pretty comfortable with the Cursed Relic with Sally. For one, she's right in front of you, so it doesn't really matter which weapon I have. More likely than not that it's gonna hit her. Another reason is that I find the fight pretty predictable and relatively easy, especially for Inkwell Isle 3. Like here, you can just stand in one place as she flies above you and be safe. A bad thing with Sally is that she doesn't have a lot of parries, so I only aim to get 1 extra HP because it would take too long to get another one. So Sally's boss fight is like a play that's done in acts. So Act 1 is done, we're moving to Act 2. The second phase is the only one I would say is even remotely challenging. So I use my super in this one. When I'm just standing around, I try to stand in the gaps between the windows so I don't get hit by the baby bottle. Alright, don't forget as she transitions into her third phase, these little mouse cars coming up. Here the stage attacks are telegraphed on the top left. For Big Wave, you have to parry the pink star to get over. I would say lightning is the toughest. I get really lucky with the lightning because I just happen to have the smoke bomb for this dash. But yeah, it takes a little bit longer with the Cursed Relic, because you need a weapon with a little bit of range here. But we're getting it done, slowly but surely. Emphasis on slowly. Fun fact is that our Cursed Relic will already be upgraded to level 3 after this fight due to the way that the weighting of the boss fights works. So we're transitioning into the final phase here. I have a super I'm using for this. Here I'm playing it too safe and just dashing and losing my good weapons. So at some point I just decide, hey, I could just jump over this umbrella and use a spread shot and then get the knockout that way. Okay, we get Sally's soul contract, and now we're actually gonna move on and face the Phantom Express. Let's check out our Cursed Relic. You'll see it's grown even more eyelashes. Looks really cool in my opinion. But we put that away for now to use Miss Chalice because, again, we're being a little bit exploitative. Her super high double jump makes Phantom Express a virtual breeze to get through.
A great slam and then now go!
Okay, so starting Phantom Express, he throws these eyeballs at us. Miss Chalice and her ability to really get these roundabouts up there, it's really helpful. With Cuphead or Mugman, I would have had to aim my roundabout. This twist up comes in useful as well, with the EX being able to clear out a bunch of eyeballs and hit the Phantom himself. For this part, I don't really do as well. The head is the only part that takes damage. The only thing you know is that it won't go to the same place twice in a row. And I have a twist up here, though I begin to question my choice because I find it's actually kind of difficult to aim it correctly. So bad guessing combined with bad aiming, and this skeleton phase takes way longer than it should. So in the spirit of my most underrated boss from earlier, the winner of that being Goopy the Grand, I have another category called most overrated boss, and that goes to this one here, the Phantom Express. Yeah, it's more difficult than some of the stuff on Inkwell Isle 1, but for me, this is not more difficult than my Cagney Carnation. I mean, I think this is like kind of a very scripted boss. Yeah, it's kind of fun. It's among my least favorite bosses, honestly, but when you're talking about least favorite in a game as great as Cuphead, it's still a very, very good fight. Okay, this Lollipop Men phase is ending now, and we're moving on to the final phase, where we have to face the locomotive of the Phantom Express. To do this, you have to parry the tail of this locomotive, and then that opens up the furnace, where the heart exists. Luckily, the heart goes above me. I can unleash the super. And here's where the twist-up comes in really useful. These white rings that occasionally hit you kind of blend into the background a little, so you have to make an effort to look out for them. We repeat this a few times, and we get the knockout. Okay, so we're getting closer to 300%. Inkwell Isle Hell has now opened up for us. We can't face King Dice yet, though. We're only here for the last hidden coin of the game. And very shortly after that, we're going to start completing objectives. As a reminder, our objectives for 300% completion are: beat all bosses in expert mode, collect all the coins, complete all the mausoleums, and upgrade the cursed relic to the divine relic. Right now we'll be collecting all the coins. These are the last 5 coins in the game in the run and gun Rugged Ridge. So again, we are P-ranking this. We're not killing anybody. And this run and gun is very tricky. As opposed to Perilous Piers, where there's a lot of chaos and improvisation, here you have to be very precise. Like, for instance, sharing the pedestal with these Aussie boomerang guys. You have to land in the right spot, know when to dash, know how to avoid the boomerang, etc. Your action here won't need to be that fast, but it has to be very, very accurate. You have to have fairly pinpoint accuracy to jump between these sand people. One thing to know about them is that they can't change direction, so if you get behind them, you don't have to worry about them anymore. Of course, there's this dragon spitting fireballs at you. Don't forget the coin here. It'd be easy to miss. Now, this part did take some practice. I'm not really sure what you can and can't parry on that face. It seems to vary for me. I'm sure there's a pattern, I just didn't want to dedicate that much time. I'm not even sure what these guys are supposed to be. It looks like they're wearing loafers and are quite light in them. As we run away from this giant, we might as well rank this in our most difficult run and gun to P rank. So with the process of elimination, there's really no suspense. This takes the number 2 spot of most difficult run and gun to P rank. So to summarize, the ranking is number 1, Perilous Piers, number 2, Rugged Ridge, number 3, Forest Follies, number 4, Funfair Fever, number 5, Funhouse Frazzle, and last but not least, oh wait, actually, it would be least, Treehouse Trouble. Alright, so with completing the last run and gun, we have finished collecting all of the coins. Let's talk to this guy who I can't remember if he wants more music or less music. I don't really care. I try to talk to every NPC in this game, including Fork Guy, who talks about how I need to get grade A's on my boss battle to be his grade A friend, even though I don't want to be his friend. He's a fork. Last boss battle of Inkwell Isle 3, and that's Werner Werman. We're using the charge shot and spread shot, and I'm not too worried about this, honestly.
This match will get red hot. You're up.
So I kind of saved Werner Werman for last because he's actually my favorite, most fun boss to play in Cuphead. New superlative, most fun boss for me in the game, main and DLC, is Werner Werman. I don't know, for me it's very casual. I know I'll beat it like 80% of the time. Alright, this cannon thing, just know it takes some time for the explosive things on the floor to actually get to you, so if it's farther away, you can wait on your jump. EX if you feel you need to pause off the ground. So these parries are the most convenient to get. There's some in the last phase, but they're not too consistent. This second phase, I think, is just like really fun, really cool. Even though, like on the bottom, if you're trying to do a short jump, like I just tried and failed to do there, just know you can duck for the middle ones. But yeah, not much to say about it. Just take some practice. We move on to the final phase, and the final phase is honestly just so, for me, it's just kind of automatic. I mean, I save a super to get rid of these, and from then on, this paw attack and the roof tiles falling are pretty in sync, so it's not hard to understand. I just honestly kind of relax at this point and get the knockout. Okay, that was the very last soul contract. I can now go to Inkwell Hell and deliver that to King Dyson the Devil. However, we have 300% to complete. I go to the shop and with my coins I buy every single item. I'm honestly not sure if I need to do that to get the actual 300%. I just do it just in case, it can't hurt, and plus it fills out my equip card, which is awesome. You can take a screenshot of it, put it on your Tinder profile or something. It's just so appealing. More 300% logistic stuff, we go into Mausoleum 3. Not too much to say about it. It's like the other mausoleums, except there's more faster stuff, there's more loop-de-loop stuff. The supers you get with Mausoleum 3, for Miss Chalice, I think it's an okay super, because otherwise you're just limited to her vertical column, Super 1, for an attack. I don't know what the Cuphead and Mugman Super 3 is. Like, I know what it is. I've summoned it. There's a guy with like a glowing thing in his chest and he spins around. I'm not really sure how to control it. I'm sure there's a whole meta behind it, but I'm not getting it. After this, we have completed all of the mausoleums. See how quickly we're knocking them out? In fact, let's put another shiny check mark on it in our list. Okay, that mausoleum's done and we're ready to move on. There's not much left to do. So we talked to this turtle, and because we P-ranked all of the running guns, we get access to a black and white filter, which I'm just gonna put on right now, because it's just like so much cooler, obviously. I looked through my equip card just to make sure I have all the weapons, supers, items, and that I have expert mode done on all my boss battles. With that, I go back to DLC Island because I never did get those ingredients to Chef Saltbaker. Okay, so all kidding aside, I don't think I could do this in black and white. I'm prepping for my battle with Chef Saltbaker. I don't feel it's a spoiler at this point to tell you that he's actually your enemy and you have to face him. I decided to use Crack Shot and Twist Up. Crack Shot will be the main star of the show because auto aim is just so helpful since there's so much to dodge. And of course I equipped my Super 2. That's the whole reason I delayed the fight in the first place. So he's got this secret dungeon with this ominous music playing on the PA. Oh phew, he's in a good mood. So Chef Saltbaker double crosses us. We went and got him the ingredients, but now he's going to turn around and kill one of us because we're the final ingredient. But nah, we can't have that, so we're gonna fight him.
This match will be red hot. And begin!
Okay, so Chef Saltbaker, really tough fight. He uses the ingredients we collected against us. The distillery dough making these crackers. That's the desert lime coming in from the right. And ingredients will come in alternating from the left and right. I guess these mountain berries from the giants are kind of in the center. The icy sugar cubes go in a sine wave. My strategy is to move left and right so I don't get caught off guard. I get my super here. That's the extra heart. I just kind of had to use it so I could start generating cards again. The target is Chef Saltbaker. As you can see, I have a crack shot. I'm just focusing on not getting hit. I will use my twist up from time to time, and then I just hope that he transitions at some point. Okay, here we go. So we're transitioning into the second phase. Here, your targets are the pepper shakers. And if you inflict enough damage on them, they do a violent sneeze that goes right into Saltbaker's face, causing him damage. And this takes lots of tiny movements. For me, I like to stay close to the ground. Most of the peppercorns can't hit you if you're ducked. As you can see, oftentimes there's not that much room to move. What I'm most focused on here are the flames. I just make sure that I don't encounter them. This is just the second of 4 phases. The third phase is pretty short. It's used to transition to the final phase, and the final phase is killer. For that reason, Chef Saltbaker finishes our list for the top 5 hardest bosses in Cuphead and DLC. At number 2, he is second place. So you just spend a little while trying to get this salt creature. I don't even know how to describe it. Okay, this phase in regular, the final phase, is pretty short and not very memorable because of how short it is. But here, the columns of salt are wider apart, and the platforms must be spaced a little bit further apart vertically. In a regular difficulty playthrough, you can get by, but here you actually have to bring some strategy. My strategy is come into this with a lot of HP and try not to lose them all. At this point in the last phase, I'm just like, please, knock out. But we get it. We get the win. Alright, so Mugman gets rescued. The bakery is now in ruins. Miss Chalice reverts to being a ghost because no Wonder Tart was created. And now the bakery is collapsing on itself, because I guess it kind of made out of a salt pillar foundation or something. And I'm sorry, but like, Cuphead, Mugman, and Miss Chalice are way too casual about this. They're just like, say it ain't so, Salt Baker, attempted murder? Oh, it's alright, we forgive you, Chef Salt Baker, we ain't pressing charges or nothing. So in the end, Miss Chalice stays a ghost, but she will always be a help to Cuphead and Mugman on their adventures. What a great friend. I was hoping that the game wouldn't restart. There's a way to not make it restart, I just don't know it. Or maybe it's not on the Xbox. But we have to restart and go back into the file. 275% total. You'll see DLC is at 97%. And that's because of the little bit of the cursed relic I have to do. The game has spit us out on DLC Isle. We have to go back to Isle 3. Alright, back on Inkwell Isle 3. There's only one thing left to do, and that's Inkwell Hell. As a reminder, we've already collected all the coins, we've done all the mausoleums, we have 2 bosses left, and we're gonna finish upgrading the cursed relic during the King Dice fight. Okay, so with soul contracts in hand, we're supposed to be able to just see the devil, but King Dice made a bet with the devil that we wouldn't make it this far, so now we have to face him because he's all pissed off. Now, if you went into this without knowing anything about this fight, you would be like, what is going on here? So basically, there's a 3-sided die. That determines how many spaces you go. Each number is a different mini-boss. I choose to start with number 1. I feel it's a good choice with the cursed relic. It's called the Tipsy Troop. Additionally, it has a lot of parries here. In fact, near the end, I decide to farm parries so that I get as many extra HP as possible. My general strategy here is to get the whiskey cup first because his attack is the hardest to avoid. Then the tall guy. And then I'd like to keep the martini girl around because she will generate more olives, which will generate parries. I do kill olives because I feel like 2 to 3 is too much to have on the screen at one time. As I go to parry the olives, I can get bounced up and hit one of the other ones, for instance. Okay, so with the tall whiskey guy done, it's just Martini Girl, but I am gonna try to get some parries. With the relic as upgraded as it is, it'll be less parries, but it'll still take a while. I generate 2 already, but I stick around just to get a couple more. I know I'll be able to generate another HP at Pip and Dot in my next fight. That's a little boring to watch, but I felt I needed to do it, so apologies in advance. So with this last parry, I think that's enough, and I decide to end the fight now. And back to the board. If you can't tell with the map or whatever, you need a minimum of 3 boss fights. My next one will be number 4, Pip and Dot. Right when he claps his hand, you know it'll get 1. If I need to roll anything other than 1, it takes a little while.
Here's a real high-class bout.
Okay, second mini-boss, and in expert mode, this requires quite a bit of precision, I would say. You really have to be precise with your jump to avoid these jewels and other hazards. I generate my final HP there, so I have a total of 5, which is good. And there is really not much to this fight. Since I had a Super 2, I decided to just get Whetstone hits in. The Whetstone is an axe you can use as a melee attack, and with the Cursed Relic this upgraded, the Whetstone will come pretty often. But yeah, we just stay the course and we get the knockout. Alright, back on the board, and I probably should have mentioned this already, but your goal is to get to the fin, the last space on this roulette board thing. So we're trying to get a safe spot, and our ultimate goal is to go to number 8, which is Mangosteen. Without using the Cursed Relic, I would just equip the Smoke Bomb and just do numbers 2, 5, 7 and make things easy for myself, but we have to upgrade this relic.
This match will get red hot.
Alright, so Mangosteen. This takes place on a pool table, I think. He's the 8-ball, and there's like chalk. And on regular, this is the easiest thing ever. This was actually my first time playing this fight on Expert ever, and I am sucking ass. I have no idea what's going on. So yeah, I had 5 HP to start. I had high hopes. At this point, I'm just trying desperately to get out of this alive. I have a Super 2, which I was gonna save for King Dice, but I'm not gonna get beat here. So I just do the Whetstone hits and just try desperately to get through this, and we beat him, thankfully. We have 1 HP left, but we still have to face King Dice. We have no cards for EX moves, so I'm not sure what we're gonna do. Well, I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna dig deep inside and find the heart of courage to get past King Dice with no cards, only 1 HP. It's all but a certainty. Additionally, look at the stars surrounding Mugman and the blue cloud. That is the Divine Relic. And this is a total surprise to me, and I'll explain why after I make this perfect dice roll and take care of this guy. This is my moment. You own it. You better never let it go. All right, we got this. We got this. Oh, crap. Oh, dang. Good news is that we can check off upgrading the relic. It's done. I'm gonna go back in here to check it out. Okay, so I'll explain why I'm surprised that I actually have the Divine Relic now. I had never used King Dice mini-bosses to upgrade it, so my assumption was that you would have to beat King Dice at the very end in order for all of your mini-boss battles to count. However, that's not the case. As long as you get the knockout, that mini-boss battle counts towards the upgrade. Look at that Divine Relic. Blue, and you get the special music too. But yeah, we do have to beat King Dice now, but I don't need to equip the relic anymore, so I'm just equipping Spread Shot and Twist Up, and I'm doing the exact same thing I did before. That includes farming parries and so forth. Since it's so boring, I'm just gonna fast forward through this part until we get to the very end. Okay, Tipsy Truth the exact same. With the Twist Up, it makes it a lot easier. Okay, Pip and Dot, not much here, same deal. We don't suck ass with Mangosteen. And now we're back with 5 HP and a Super 2 at the ready. We do this for real. Expert mode, King Dice. Yeah, I'm pretty bad at this part. I will take a lot of hits, and I'm not much better in regular either. I'm just hoping that the 5 HP and the invincibility earlier would be enough, and luckily it is. Alright, this is it, the final boss. We meet the devil himself. Nothing fancy in terms of equipment. We have the spread shot as the primary weapon, roundabout as secondary. We have the Super 2 equipped, and an extra heart. In case you don't know, you will have an option to just give the devil the soul contracts, and that gives you the bad ending. If you refuse to give him the soul contracts, then you have to fight him. So he asks you, will you join my team? You have to say no. That's the right decision. Remember from earlier, Elder Kettle.
This match will get red hot. And begin.
Okay, the devil. The first phase is definitely the hardest. It's especially hard when he spins his trident. It's to your advantage to parry whatever's in there. For this neck thing, I have the roundabout so I could hit him, but if you run to the edge, you could avoid it. For his hand clap thing, it's always good to save a card to do an EX for the hand clap, because you can stay in the air longer. Again, parry what you can. It'll just be less things for you to avoid later. But yeah, mostly I'm just staying on him with the spread shot. I use the roundabout EX just because the spread shot EX you have to be like right up in his face to get the full effect of it, which I don't really time correctly. The spider thing, I just do this thing where you just dash at the last second. Okay, but that should be enough, and he's transitioning to the second phase. The second phase is actually pretty straightforward. The target is very big. You shoot his eyes. Make a note of the chip. It'll always go left to right or right to left, one space at a time, and keep that pattern for the remainder of the fight. You want to parry whatever comes out of his ear if you're stuck on that side. Otherwise, you could just run to the other side. I have my Super 2, but I am going to save it till the very end. In keeping with my minion killing methodology, I try to kill these purple things if I can, and the flying bats on the top. Okay, now the perfect time to use a super as we transition from 3 platforms to 1. There's no real need to worry about this first chip here. We just hope we get it done. Alright, and that's Cuphead and DLC. 300% is done. We have beaten all the bosses on expert mode. Okay, so with the devil defeated, the Inkwell Isle residents whose soul contracts were collected are no longer indebted to him, and they can be free and live happily ever after the end. Alright, right after this, we're really quickly just gonna go back into the file just to make sure we have 300%. And there it is, 300. 300. Oh, it feels so good. So let's go into the file for one final check. We're looking at all the weapons, all the supers, all the charms and items, and we look through each individual card. World 1, World 2, World 3, Finale, and DLC. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.